The Lunar New Year is here again, and practically all companies or brands doing business with China try to harness the enormous commercial potential of the largest holiday of the Chinese-speaking world. But some companies struggle more than others when they try to get it right, how to advertise, how to promote their brands during Chinese New Year. In this video, first I'm going to share some examples where the lack of an intercultural mindset or insufficient attention to the spirit of the Chinese New Year result in some unfortunate marketing examples by international brands. Now, even if you do business with China, you might ask, why should I care about Chinese New Year? After all, most companies doing business with China do not run commercial brands. They might manufacture some spare parts for the automotive industry, or sell an app or IT services to some Chinese companies or end users. But I would like to share these examples with you because I think the attitude of international companies to Chinese New Year reveals something more profound and more universal, going far beyond this specific holiday. And specifically, it can highlight two typical mistakes that leaders of East-West businesses often make. One of them is to ignore or dismiss cultural differences and try to do business exactly the same way as they did in their home cultures, simply because it feels safer and easier to just run your business without giving any kind of compromise to local cultural circumstances. The other one is to actually try to localize your products or services to specific circumstances, in this case China or Chinese New Year, but still being stuck in some kind of mindset, a visual language, which comes from your home culture and doesn't really adapt to the local circumstances. Most importantly, I would like to show you that it is possible for an international company or an international brand to get it right with local holidays like Chinese New Year, and you can get it right without compromising the identity, the values, the visual language of the brand or of the company that you are representing worldwide. My name is Gabor Holch, intercultural leadership executive coach, consultant, trainer and advisor, previously living in China for 20 years and currently splitting my time between Asia and Europe. Now, you might say that holiday-specific localization is not the most fundamental issue in international leadership, in running international businesses. And to some extent, I do agree with you. In the localization pyramid that I include in my Dragon Suit workshops that prepare managers and executives for working with China, running businesses in China, holidays are actually the topmost, the smallest segment of the pyramid, after much more fundamental issues like working with China's speed and geographic diversity. But Chinese New Year for leaders of East-West businesses is more important than meets the eye. You see, I lived full-time in China for 20 years and I celebrated Chinese New Year all over China in different cities with a wide array of different people. And I can tell you that not only in China itself, but also in the Chinese-speaking world, for example, in Southeast Asia, Chinese New Year has enormous potential. It's a great opportunity for leaders of East-West businesses for two specific reasons. One of them is that it packs enormous commercial potential. So much more than many of the top holidays in some other countries combined together. This is when Chinese people do most of their traveling, most of their shopping in the year. And the other one is for leaders of businesses in China or leaders whose companies do business with China and they have a local team. Chinese New Year is a great opportunity to build a sense of community within the Chinese team and also between international experts, managers, executives, and the local colleagues, and for the company to show their appreciation to Chinese colleagues during this holiday. Now, in this video, I would like to first show you a couple of companies that I don't think get it right with Chinese New Year. So basically, they miss an opportunity here. Before I do that, I would like to remind you that the upcoming year in the Chinese calendar is the so-called Dragon Year. And the dragon is a very special zodiac sign for a number of reasons. If you go through and look at the Chinese zodiac calendar, you might notice that the dragon is the only animal that is a mythical one, not a real one. All the other animals, for example, in previous years, we had the tiger year, we had the rabbit year, and then coming up is the snake year, which are all real animals. But also, the dragon has a very special place in Chinese people's hearts and traditions. So this is the way I try to explain it in my book, Dragon Suit. Chinese people use the dragon as their cultural icon because dragons are believed to be everywhere and still remain a mystery. Think Loch Ness monsters in every lake. Like the dragon, China is unavoidable. I challenge you to look around you right now without spotting anything made in China. Or if you are in a crowded bookstore, airport or cafe, someone from China. Yet, despite thousands of dragon-titled books, films, lectures and businesses, the world's most populous country managed to remain a mystery for most people. Now, if you do business with China or try to promote a brand to China, my first advice would be don't miss this opportunity. It's a fantastic opportunity to connect your brand with Chinese people. And I would say don't be like some of the top fashion retail brands in the world who basically dismiss the visual language, the traditions, the spirit of Chinese New Year for a very, very specific reason. It's simply, they think it doesn't fit into their own brand image. Look at this Bottega Veneta commercial specifically designed for Chinese New Year, but that little marking in Chinese characters below is the only indication that this is for the Chinese New Year. Or these couple of other examples by Prada, by Sandro and so on, which are collections launched for the Chinese New Year, and they give basically a kind of nod to Chinese New Year in the sense that, for example, Burberry claims that the strap on this purse is a dragon-themed one. But otherwise, these brands very often act like the teenagers in a Christmas gathering who are too cool to wear the sweater because it doesn't fit their general image. The result is that very often Chinese people cannot really connect with these campaigns because I will tell you what Chinese New Year is all about, but it is usually red, it's usually gold, it's usually loud, and it's usually dynamic. And if a couple of extremely good-looking people with a 5 o'clock shadow stand on top of a building and show off their gray and black outfits, it doesn't really say Chinese New Year to local customers. Let's move on and look at a couple of international brands which do try to make an effort to customize for Chinese New Year, but the frame of reference, the mental imagery that they try to use is still stuck in their home cultures and doesn't really connect with the local Chinese mindset. Look at this campaign for last year's Rabbit Year. And the mistake that they make here is what many other international brands make as well. No, the animal, the rabbit in the Chinese calendar is not the Easter bunny, is not this cartoon bunny. It's actually an icon that goes back to thousands of years. Each of these animals represents something, and you can basically look it up what it means in the Chinese calendar. But the rabbit in the Chinese mythology is not the playful, silly animal that we have in the rest. Is actually a kind of spiritual guide that represents both speed and diligence, and basically the belief that if we work hard and if we move fast, then we get what we want from life. Some other international brands make the same mistake with this year's dragon. So when we say dragon, in the West, we have something completely different. You know, the Western dragon is something that Saint George and the Shrek tried to fight because it is a mixture of good and evil. But in the Chinese mythology, it's something completely different. It is pure good. It is the icon of everlasting life, of luck, and the nation itself. So international brands have to be a little bit careful, like Fendi, in my opinion, should have been when they picked the Pokemon dragon for some reason for their Chinese New Year campaign. Also, is it not just enough to turn everything red and gold, even though that is arguably the visual symbol of Chinese New Year. But for example, if you create a so-called localized product like Tag Heuer did here, which is basically a normal watch with a little bit of red here and there, This is not going to scream Chinese New Year for Chinese people. I am going to show you a much better example in the same product category a little bit later in this video. Let's look at a couple of slightly better examples, what I call myself tentative localization, when the owners, the marketers of the brand try to do something about Chinese New Year and it's much closer to what I would imagine as a successful Chinese New Year campaign. Unfortunately, many of these campaigns show what Kyle Hegarty calls in his book the slap dragon mentality. That basically whatever the product is, we can slap a dragon on it and Chinese people are going to appreciate it as a localization effort. I'm going to leave a link to the book in the notes section, but in the meantime, let's see a couple of slap dragon examples for Chinese New Year. Like this baseball hat from Moose Knuckles, which is basically just a regular hat with a dragon on it. Like this Burberry commercial, which I think is much better than the previous one, because Burberry discovered the connection between their logo, which basically shows a knight that would fight a dragon, and the dragon year. So I think the problem here is that predominantly Western people would make the mental connection and not Chinese ones. But otherwise, if you look at the campaign itself, you can see there is some gold in it, there is some red in it. I think it's already a little bit festive. But if you flip through these annual collection of campaigns for Chinese New Year, you can also see how little it takes to connect to Chinese people through Chinese New Year without sacrificing the commercial sense and the brand identity. So you see, a dilemma that advertisers often face with customizing for Chinese New Year is if you buy something which is customized specifically for Chinese New Year, you are not going to wear it all through the year. So you are just basically investing your money in something that you are wearing for a week or two. Now, look at this IWC watch, which is a perfect example. It is a watch customized for Chinese New Year because there is that beautiful dragon on the flip side. But otherwise, if you show the face for most of the year, it is just a watch that you can put on at any time of the year. These purses and these Barbie dolls are a similar example. They are festive enough. They show clear signs of the Chinese New Year, the red, the gold, the silk, the festive spirit. But you could wear this purse on any given day if you match it with your general outfit. And the Barbie doll is also a great balance. If you take it out of the package, then it's a doll in a beautiful Chinese style dress. Companies that want to advertise and market during the Chinese New Year in a way that Chinese people actually understand it and connect with it, they have to understand a couple of things that make Chinese New Year special. The first thing is that Chinese New Year is not a peaceful holiday. It is a very dynamic holiday when a whole nation is on the move. Tens of millions of people start migrating, go back to their hometowns, visit family members or visit friends. And Chinese New Year advertising campaigns had better express this dynamism if they want Chinese people to feel like the commercial really expresses what this holiday is all about. Some of the companies that are in the best position to express that dynamism are sports brands. And if you saw my previous videos about Chinese New Year, you can see how many times I quote companies like Nike, for example, or Adidas in this commercial, where you can see the festive backgrounds and the protagonists wear red, but you can also see everything that resembles what Chinese people actually experience while they are traveling back to their hometowns, meeting all the relatives that they haven't met very often for a year. All the cooking, all the shopping, all the visits, all the travels. But of course, you don't have to sell sneakers in order to express this kind of dynamic connection that Chinese people associate with the holiday. Look at this commercial that is also for a high-end fashion brand, but it doesn't show the models as kind of lonely mannequins, but connects them in this game that we call Chinese whispers, although Chinese people do not. Another thing that leaders who try to make their firm successful in China have to understand about Chinese New Year, that exactly because it brings together the family from all over the country for a short period of time, for very, very intensive discussions, it's a basically conflicted holiday. This is when young generations are faced with their ancestral duties. This is where parents roast their kids. Why didn't they get married? Why didn't they make more money? Why didn't they get promoted? Why didn't they buy another flat? And so on. And this is where old people sit down for the same discussions and see it in a completely different way, worry about these young people, but also appreciate their signs of kindness, receive gifts, receive clothes, receive fruits, And the family exchanges stories, which very often come from all over the country where family members live. Now, this would not be a part of, let's say, a Christmas commercial in the West, but it very nicely comes out of these two TV commercials from two competing brands, Pepsi and Coca-Cola. One about those little resentments and conflicts that inevitably come out when you put the family together, and the other one about this resentful youngest brother who has to run all the errands for the Chinese New Year on his bicycle out in the cold. And finally, the most important thing that many Western brands try to forget: Chinese New Year must be tacky. If you want to understand why and you don't have the opportunity to go to China or Southeast Asia, look at the Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year decorations in people's homes and out in the streets, just take a look at this video. So this is a background that you can use for your own Chinese New Year's greetings if you want to, packing everything that you need for Chinese New Year. The gold, the red, the firecrackers, the animals, the background music. What more do you need? Now, if you wonder if it's at all possible to pack all of this together in one marketing campaign, the dynamism, the family, the traveling, the tackiness, then what you can do is learn from local brands first of all. Like this local TV commercial where this young office worker is struggling to fulfill her office duties and her duties to her family, and also her ancestral duties to, as we hear it, from her great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. Or this brilliant piece where the little brother backflips into a deliberately and delightfully tacky and traditional dinner scene. But you can find international brands just as easily every single year who seem to be able to pack all of these necessary elements of Chinese New Year campaigns into one single commercial. And if you follow my annual Chinese New Year videos, you know that Adidas is one of my favorites almost every year. I don't know how they do it. Maybe they just use more local talent for the creative part of these commercials, but they can put everything together: the community, the family, tradition, and obviously it's still about the brand and the product. So this is an excellent example. Obviously, for some brands and some products, it's easier to do it than for others. A sports brand would find it much easier to express this dynamism. And when you look at this Lego commercial, I mean, it's almost too easy to create a commercial where this toy that is extremely popular in China, just like in many other countries, brings different generations together to play. But still, you must put some thought into it so that the background, the body language, expresses the kind of festive spirits that Chinese people have in mind. But you don't have to sell sports goods or toys to get Chinese New Year right. So for example, for many years now, I have admired the way Coca-Cola manages to connect their products with the festive spirit of the Chinese New Year, with obvious ideas like their product color is red, but also with very shrewd creative ideas that a Coca-Cola can is cylindrical and it pops like a firecracker. And let me tell you, it works. I have hardly ever been in a Chinese New Year dinner where they didn't serve Coca-Cola in the can. And finally, your brand doesn't have to do anything with sports or food or hospitality or travel to create a beautiful commercial which is in line with the spirit of the Chinese New Year holidays and with the values and the visual language of your brand. And this year, the best example I thought is this spectacular cosmetics commercial with an amazing dragon flying over a landscape that would lift your spirits, whether you are Chinese or somebody who knows this Chinese holiday very well. One thing I didn't find for this year's video is some kind of huge scandal where international brands got the Chinese holiday extremely wrong, offended local consumers, and whipped up some kind of social media frenzy. I think that's a good thing. Every single previous year, there was some crazy scandal that you can see in my previous videos. So I think probably international brands are learning, although obviously some of them still get it better than others. I hope these examples are useful for your business, for your activities in China or with China. If you're interested in working with me as a coach, as a speaker, as a trainer or advisor, I left some links in the notes of this video so you can contact me, book a free call, or learn a little bit more about my coaching work. And with this, I would like to wish you, your teams, and your families a very happy and lucky Dragon Year. 恭喜发财